How's it going, YouTube? I'm Landon. Welcome back to another most amazing top 10 video. Have you guys ever wondered what is the most incredible thing someone survives? And also, let me ask you this, what is something that you're afraid of? And what top 10 video should I make next? Okay, so getting right into this video, this right here is the top 10 most amazing people who survived the impossible. So coming in at number 10, we have Anna Begenholm, and let's call her Ice Woman. She was born in 1970 in Vandenberg, Sweden. Well, in 1999, she had a skiing accident that left her trapped underneath a layer of ice for 80 minutes in freezing water. During that time, she became a victim of extreme hypothermia, and her body decreased to 56.7 degrees Fahrenheit. For a normal person, it's about 98. So Anna was able to survive because she was able to find an air pocket underneath the ice, and she was just like breathing through it. But she suffered from circulatory arrest after 40 minutes of being in the water. So a rescue team found her and airlifted her by helicopter to the nearest hospital. A team of 100 doctors and nurses worked in shifts for a period of 9 hours to try to save her life. So she was in a coma for 10 days, and guess what? She woke up. So since the accident, she has made an almost full recovery. The reason why she was able to survive was because her body completely froze before her heart stopped beating. She was literally frozen in time. Coming in at number 9, we have Vesna Vulovic, and let's call her the Flying Woman. Vanessa was a stewardess on board Flight 367 back in 1972. Her plane went down while flying over East Germany on its route from Stockholm to Belgrade when the plane exploded from Croatia terrorists who planted a bomb on the plane. So the plane broke into two and Vanessa flew right out of the plane. So she fell 10,160 meters to the ground. The plane then crashed into a mountain near a village, killing everyone, leaving her as the sole survivor. She suffered a fractured skull, 3 broken vertebrae, she was temporarily paralyzed from the waist down, and also had 2 broken legs. She went into a coma for 27 days, but now she was fully recovered from the accident. She was then put into the Guinness World Records books for the highest jump out of an airplane without a parachute and to live to tell the story. Moving on, Roy Sullivan. Let's call him the Lightning Man, and he comes in at number 8. He is a United States Park Ranger when he was hit by lightning on 7 different occasions and survived all of them. He was recognized by the Guinness World Records books as the person who has been struck by lightning by more than any other human. His first strike was back in 1942 when he lost his big toenail. In 1969, he lost his eyebrows and he was knocked unconscious. 1970, he was left with a really bad shoulder scar. In 73, he was struck right in the head. 1977, his most recent one and his most serious one. It took him to the hospital. So this story about Roy Sullivan actually ends on a sad note. At the age of 71 years old, he actually took his own life with a gunshot wound. Alright, at number 7, we have Truman Duncan. And let's call him Miracle Half Man. The 38-year-old man was working at his job at a railway. He was on the train when he slipped and fell right in front of the train. He was pulled right underneath the train, being dragged by the wheels for 75 feet. And then his body couldn't take it anymore. He was ran right over and cut right into 2. Miraculously enough, he was able to call 911 on his own cell phone. He closed his eyes and just waited for help to come. He fought to stay alive. And when the emergency teams came and put an IV in him, that's when lights were out for Truman. Anything after that, he does not remember. So he woke up 2 to 3 weeks later and realized that he's still alive. He lost both his legs and his kidney. During the time when he was in a coma, doctors only gave him 1 in a million chances of living. He fought all odds, undergoing 23 major surgeries, and now he lives to share his story. He has shared it with ABC and even the Oprah Winfrey Network. Remarkable enough, he went back and he's working at the same job. Okay, moving on to Louis Zamperini, and let's call him Unbroken. You guys remember that movie that came out that was directed by Angelina Jolie? Well, that movie was based from a true story, and it's Louis's life. He was an American prisoner of the war who survived in World War II. He also had an Olympic career. Well, his life took a turn when his plane crashed into the sea. He was able to get into a raft and just float the sea until he was able to reach land or until he was saved. Well, he was out on sea for 47 days. He survived many shark attacks. There was a plane that dropped bombs on him. This is like the enemy of the war. He had to jump in the water and avoid being blown up. So on day 47, he found this island, but bad luck for him, it was of the enemy. He walked into a Japanese camp that took him prisoner. Well, guess what? He was able to survive all that, win the war. Louis eventually went on to live a very old age at 97 years old. He has lived the most amazing events in history. Now we have Carlos Rodriguez at number 5. And let's call him the man with half a head. He lost a large portion of his brain and skull after flying through his car front window and landing on his head during a serious car accident. This picture that you guys are looking at right now, everyone thinks that this is fake, this is impossible, this is photoshopped. Well, no, this is real, and this is the guy's true story. Doctors were forced to cut away large portions of his head and skull to try to keep this guy alive during the brutal accident that he went through. So he's missing a lot of flesh and bone. He has fully recovered, and amazing enough, he's living a very normal life. Very lucky guy. So the accident happened when he was 14 years old. He was on a lot of drugs and decided to go out driving. He hit into a pole and went flying right out the front window because he didn't have a seatbelt on. Well, he was arrested, but he spent most of his time at the hospital. Coming in at number 4, Aron Ralston. Or you know what, better known as 127 Hours. I know what you guys are thinking.
Oh my god, Landon, I freaking love that movie.
Well, this is another movie based out of a true story. Aron was the man behind the movie that was played by James Franco. In 2003, in southeastern Utah, he had an accident where he fell from a cliff when a boulder fell on his right forearm, keeping him trapped there. He was stuck there for 5 days, which was 127 hours. He resorted to amputating his own arm with a dull knife in order to get himself free. And if you guys go on YouTube right now, his original footage, not from the movie footage, Aron's video is on YouTube and you guys can watch the real thing. And he even talks about what he had to go through to cut his arm off. It was brutal. So once this guy was free, he was still far from safety. He had to rappel down 65 feet and walk for hours to try to find some help. During this time, he lost 40 pounds and 25% of his blood, but somehow he found the strength to survive. So now he considers himself as reborn. Okay, moving on. Finally, at number 3, we have Julianne Kopecky, or let's call her sole survivor. At the age of 17 years old, she was on a plane in 1954 that crashed into a mountain in Vietnam after being struck by lightning due to a severe thunderstorm. The flight was Lanza Flight 508 and it was en route from Lima, Peru to Pucallpa, Peru. There was 92 people on board and one of them being her mom. Well, Julianne was the only survivor who survived a 10,000 feet fall. The whole time she was still strapped to her seat, so she fell to the bottom of the forest. She was knocked out for a whole day. When she woke up, she realized that she's the sole survivor. So this is when she knew she needed to find help, try to find a village or something. So in the forest, she was being eaten alive by bugs and maggots. So she learned something that her father taught her because her mom and dad are actually scientists. And she knew to get rid of all these bug bites, she needed to burn them away by getting gasoline and pouring it all over her body. But you know what? It worked. 11 days later, she was saved. So much later in time, investigators found out that her mother actually also survived the crash, but she died in the forest. Okay, moving on. At number, we have Wenceslao Moguel, and he is the Bullet Man. Back on March 18, 1915, he was captured while fighting in the Mexican Revolution War. Without trial, he was sentenced to be executed by a firing squad. A firing squad is a method of capital punishment. It was very common during the war. It's where a team of people come together, get their guns out, and when they're ready, they start shooting. They start shooting at vital organs, which is usually the head. Wenceslao was shot 9 times, including a final bullet from close distance right to the head because they wanted to make sure that he was dead. But miraculously enough, he survived, and guess what? He was actually able to escape. So he went on to live a full life. This famous picture that you guys have been seeing throughout this whole thing, it was taken in 1937 in NBC studios after 20 years after he was shot. He was talking about his story, and after that he went on to travel with the Ripley's Believe It or Not crew around the world. And finally, at the number 1 spot, we have Fran Salak. And let's call him the world's luckiest man. Fran is a Croatia music teacher. Back in 1962, Fran was riding a train through a cold, rainy canyon when the train flipped off the tracks and crashed into the river. He survived from a broken arm and hypothermia. The next year, during his first and only plane ride, he was blown out of a malfunctioning plane door and landed in haystacks. 3 years after that, he got on a bus that skid off a road and landed into a river. Fran managed to swim to shore with only cuts and bruises. In 1970, his car caught on fire. He managed to escape before the fuel tank blew up. 3 years later, the engine of his car was doused with hot oil, causing flames to shoot through the vents, but he survived. In 1955, he was struck by a bus in Zagreb, which is in Croatia, but sustained only minor injuries. Moving on to 1996, he was involved with a head-on collision on a mountain curve, which caused him to get ejected from his car, and he somehow landed in a tree while his car plummeted to the ground down 300 feet. It sounds so unbelievable, but he has escaped death 7 times, making him the world's luckiest man. It's almost like a movie, but it doesn't end there. Unbelievably, when he turned 73 years old, he won $1 million from the lottery. This is like the luckiest, unluckiest guy. So believe it or not, but all of these events are true. But there you have it. That was the top 10 most amazing people who survived the impossible. Thank you so much for watching. So what did you guys think of that video? If you enjoyed it, don't forget to share it around and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe because I'm coming out with another video next week. And also don't forget to tell me what top 10 do you want to see next. Okay.